All people are subdivided into two types: those who love Game of Thrones and those who just haven't seen it yet. But did you know that George Martin found inspiration, and many of his storylines, in real historical events? Cersei Lannister, Daenerys Targaryen, Ned Stark, and Joffrey Baratheon all had real historical prototypes. In this video, we'll explore the parallels between the fictional world of Game of Thrones and real-life figures and events. At its core, Game of Thrones is the story of a ruthless war for power, for the throne of the Seven Kingdoms. But this isn't just fantasy. In fact, it mirrors one of the bloodiest conflicts in English history, the Wars of the Roses. A bitter rivalry between the houses of Lancaster and York. Sound familiar? Lannisters and Starks, perhaps. And the symbolism runs deeper than you might think. The real Lancasters, like the fictional Lannisters, carried the emblem of a golden lion. Their war began, just like in the series, with a deadly struggle between a queen and the Lord Protector. In the show, Queen Cersei Lannister uses political intrigue to bring Ned Stark, Hand of the King, to his death. In history, Queen Margaret of Anjou played a key role in this downfall and eventual beheading of Richard Plantagenet, who served as Lord Protector of England. Margaret of Anjou, like Cersei Lannister, was known for her beauty, pride, and unyielding will, and, notably, for her lack of affection toward her husband. Rumours swirled that her son, Prince Edward of Westminster, wasn't the king's child at all, but the product of her relationship with a favoured courtier. In Game of Thrones, this same motif becomes undeniable truth. All three of Cersei's children are in fact bastards, born of her incestuous affair with her brother. This secret sets off a chain reaction, and a brutal war for the throne. What's more, Margaret's son bore an eerie resemblance to Joffrey Baratheon, especially in temperament. Edward, raised amid war, developed a terrifying taste for cruelty. According to one contemporary account, the 13-year-old prince spoke of nothing but cutting off heads and waging war. He was feared for his sadistic tendencies. Edward of Lancaster died young, slain in battle, while Joffrey met his end at the hands of conspirators poisoned at his own wedding. Two princes, two violent ends. Neither lived to rule. Ned Stark, the Hand of the King who dared to confront Queen Cersei, mirrors the fate of Richard Plantagenet, Duke of York. Richard was appointed Lord Protector during the mental illness of King Henry VI, but Queen Margaret of Anjou conspired against him and ultimately had him removed from the royal council. This political betrayal became the starting point of the Wars of the Roses in 1455. At first, Richard only sought to restore his authority as regent. But after several military victories, his ambitions changed. He began to claim the English crown, being the grandson of King Edward III through his mother's line. Much like Ned Stark, Richard was admired by the common people and soldiers. He opposed royal abuses and openly questioned the legitimacy of the heir to the throne. But both men, fathers, patriots, and men of principle, became victims of courtly intrigue. Ned was executed by the order of King Joffrey. Richard died in battle at Wakefield, betrayed by northern lords he believed were allies. His severed head was displayed on a spike, just like Ned's in King's Landing. Interestingly, the fate of Ned Stark's son, Robb Stark, King in the North, closely mirrors that of Richard Plantagenet's son, King Edward IV of England. Both came to power at a young age and earned fame as gifted military commanders. Robb won a series of victories against the Lannisters, while Edward triumphed in decisive battles against the Lancasters. Edward IV, like Robb, was charismatic and beloved by his army, but the most striking parallel lies in their reckless marriages for love. Edward IV secretly wed the beautiful Elizabeth Woodville, a politically disadvantageous match that alienated many of his allies. Robb Stark made a similar choice, marrying the love of his life and breaking a sworn promise to wed one of Lord Frey's daughters. For Edward, this impulsive marriage cast doubt on the legitimacy of his children, and eventually gave his brother a pretext to seize the throne. For Robb, the consequences were even more tragic. His broken vow led to the infamous Red Wedding. One of the most dramatic scenes in Game of Thrones, the infamous Red Wedding, was inspired by not one, but two real events from Scottish history. The first was the so-called Black Dinner, which took place in 1440 at the court of King James II of Scotland. A 16-year-old heir of the powerful Douglas clan, along with his younger brother, was invited to a feast at Edinburgh Castle. In the middle of the banquet, as drums thundered, a black bull's head, a symbol of death, was brought out on a platter. Despite being promised safety, the two brothers were immediately seized and executed in the castle courtyard, a brutal violation of the sacred right of hospitality. The second historical parallel is the massacre of Glencoe, which occurred in 1692. Soldiers, staying as royal guests in the home of Clan MacDonald, suddenly turned on their hosts at night. On the king's orders, they killed 38 people in cold blood, including women and children, under the very roof where they had been welcomed. Both incidents are remembered for their extraordinary treachery. The murder of guests who had trusted their hosts. The real-life inspiration behind the ruthless patriarch Tywin Lannister is Richard Neville, Earl of Warwick, a man known to history as the Kingmaker. During the Wars of the Roses, the Earl of Warwick was the most powerful political figure in England. It was he who helped Edward IV seize the throne, only to later turn against him. After falling out with the king, Warwick changed sides and restored the mentally unstable Henry VI to the throne, becoming the de facto ruler of the country. Tywin Lannister plays a similar role in Game of Thrones. As the ultimate power broker behind the scenes, his wealth and strategic alliances brought Robert Baratheon to the throne through his marriage to Tywin's daughter, Cersei, and later ensured the rise of his grandson, King Joffrey. Tywin ruled not from the throne, but through it. One of my favourite characters in the Game of Thrones universe is Lady Olenna Tyrell, the sharp-tongued matriarch of House Tyrell, whose sigil bears a golden rose. To me, her character seems inspired by Margaret Beaufort, the formidable ancestor of the Tudor dynasty, originally symbolised by the red rose. Much like Olenna, Margaret Beaufort wielded enormous influence behind the scenes. She shaped dynastic marriages, guided her son's rise to power, and played a key role in founding a royal line, all while never wearing a crown herself. A true queen in everything but title. At the heart of the Game of Thrones saga stands Daenerys Targaryen, a central figure whose story and character draw inspiration from several real historical figures. Her narrative arc closely mirrors that of Henry Tudor, later King Henry VII, a royal heir returned from exile. Like Daenerys, Henry grew up across the sea, then returned with an army to reclaim the crown. His emblem, aside from the famous red and white Tudor rose, was the Red Dragon of Wales. A symbol of his Welsh ancestry, Daenerys too marches under the banner of red dragons, the sigil of House Targaryen. Henry's victory ended the Wars of the Roses. Daenerys' early triumphs brought an end to the War of the Five Kings, though her journey would ultimately spiral into madness. But Daenerys also shares striking parallels with Cleopatra VII, the last queen of ancient Egypt. Cleopatra was brilliant, charismatic, and the final ruler of the Ptolemaic dynasty, a family known for their tradition of intrafamilial marriage, much like the Targaryens. She had a rival brother whom she defeated and, according to legend, brought to ruin. Daenerys likewise had a brother rival, Viserys, who died at the hands of her ally, Khal Drogo. Both queens, one real, one fictional, were admired for their beauty and intellect. Both used marriage and alliances with powerful warriors to strengthen their positions. Cleopatra with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, Daenerys with Drogo. And tragically, both stories ended in early death, queens undone by ambition, betrayal, and the weight of power. As you've likely realised by now, George Martin drew inspiration not only from English history, but also from the ancient world. One striking example is the Great Wall of Ice in the north of Westeros, guarded by the Night's Watch. Its real-world counterpart, Hadrian's Wall in northern England. Built in 122 AD by Roman Emperor Hadrian, the wall stretched 117 kilometres across Britain. It was meant to defend the Roman provinces from raids by northern tribes. In Game of Thrones, the wall is a far more dramatic structure, towering 200 metres high and made of ice, rather than 4 to 6 metres of Roman stone. But the idea remains the same, a last line of defence. Only in Westeros it stands against supernatural threats, White Walkers and the undead, not just wild tribes. Another ancient influence is wildfire, the dangerous substance used by the alchemists of King's Landing. It clearly draws inspiration from Greek fire, a mysterious incendiary weapon developed by the Byzantine Empire. Greek fire could ignite on contact with water and couldn't be extinguished, causing panic in enemy fleets. Its exact composition remains a secret to this day, making it as much a psychological weapon as a physical one. In Game of Thrones, wildfire behaves in a similar way, a volatile green liquid that ignites instantly and is almost impossible to put out. It played a decisive role during the Battle of Blackwater, turning the tide of war through terror and flame. George Martin seems to have taken several centuries of real history, blended and reshaped them and brought them into a fantasy world. And yet, knowing the historical prototypes behind his characters helps us understand them on a deeper level. Because at the heart of these stories are very real human dramas. Power struggles, betrayals at banquets, religious fanaticism and political schemes that played out in our world long before dragons and White Walkers ever existed. What about you? Have you noticed any other historical parallels while watching the show? Do you also see echoes of real historical figures in the characters of Game of Thrones? If you enjoyed this video and would like to see a part 2, I'd be truly grateful for your like and comment. See you in the next video.